Hello guys, welcome back to the Overseers. My name's Proelios and I'm joined as usual by my co-host Nightwing. And this is our team preview for the Guangzhou Charge going into season 5 of the Overwatch League. Let's kick things off as usual going over the tank line of the Charge, which is Rio and Krong. Um, let's talk about Rio first, Nightwing, and I think I'll let you go first considering how much you absolutely admire this player.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the gist of it is I don't like Rio. I don't think he's good. The analyses I've seen from other people all like clearly state that he's not good. Like anyone that goes into it blind looking at Rio's gameplay just thinks he's feeding, and often he is. Uh, I think he's been left behind by the rest of the league as the seasons have gone on. I think he was slightly better in season 3 than he was in season 4. You could see that coming into season 4, the show matches he played were pretty terrible, and the team did much better with Ji-hoon than him at that time. But obviously, they've still decided to keep him, which is, I guess, of their own accord. I would genuinely hope and pray to the Overwatch League gods that CR0ng gets played instead of him, just because I have no faith in Rio's gameplay. I think outside of maybe holding down the fort with Orisa, there's not much I would really attribute him being very good at the Overwatch League level. I think basically every tank in the APAC region, obviously the Valiant have not signed theirs yet, but I'd wager even that tank is probably better than Rio. I think every single tank in the APAC region is better than Rio at the moment. So I just really do not want him to see playtime unless absolutely necessary. And if CR0ng is just unwell or he's generally just not able to play a particular hero at all, that's when I want to see Rio in. Otherwise, I do not want to see Rio play, just because I think it'll just let the rest of the team down.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that Rio has been the main tank for the Guangzhou Charge for more than 3 years at this point. And you're right, Nightwing, his value has diminished over the years. And I definitely believe he's one of the weakest tanks going to Overwatch 2. He used to be an all-rounder in Season 2, but now he's just not. And the team would have probably let him go if he weren't still under contract. Um, it's just unfortunate, really. I don't like talking so negatively about any player, but it's just what it is for Rio. I think. Um, I think let's move on to CR0ng, and I believe CR0ng, on the contrary, is a really good tank player. He is an off-tank specialist, and he's been very flexible so far. He has shown a lot of promise on Diva, Zarya, Sigma. You name an off-tank, he's been good on it, and I don't think he's top tier anymore. Like he was absolutely godly back in season 3, but I still think he'll be very competitive going into Overwatch 2 because of his flexibility and a strong mechanical skill. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see CR0ng actually, and like you said, Nightwing, I think he'll be seeing a lot more playtime than Rio. Uh, yeah, you can go ahead and share your thoughts on CR0ng.
I think Guangzhou Charge having CR0ng is definitely an asset to them, because there are some teams in the APAC region that have just not really signed an like counter to CR0ng, in the sense that they don't have anyone that specializes in those off-rank roles. You look at the Seoul Dynasty, they just have Smurf. You look at the Hangzhou Spark, they do have Liga and Bernard, but Liga has questionable playtime, and I think CR0ng is probably better than Bernard, at least slightly. I think even the Chengdu Hunters, they only really have Gaga, and I think in a meta favoring, those off tank, classically known as off tank heroes, like I think CR0ng can probably create that little edge that the Guangzhou Charge might need to secure a win, um, if such a situation arises. And based off of early reports from Overwatch 2, obviously some leaks and rumors flying about, heroes like Diva, like Zarya are being preferred right now, and that's basically CR0ng's forte. And I think if that continues on into the actual league when it starts in May, I think that could be a real asset. Uh, and I really hope that uh, Crong is able to show that flexibility and probably even move over to the ball, because I think some skills for ball are very transferable for uh, off-tank players, and I think he'll be able to pick heroes like the ball up as well, because he's very mechanically talented. He has a great just sense for the game as well. So I think Krong's a very solid player to still have signed, even if he's not at that very, very top tier that he was in season 3, where you would almost consider him rookie of the year or even MVP candidate to some degree. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Krong.
Hmm. And I think all in all, with Rio and Cr0ng, this roster still needs a bit of an upgrade on the tank line. Even though I have faith in Cr0ng, I think the team needs more of a playmaker on the tank role. And Cr0ng is like more so like peel focused rather than uh, like being an aggressive tank player. And Rio is just not up there at all. So I'm a bit concerned about this tank line in general. Especially if Overwatch 2 is going to involve a lot of like carry aggressive play from the tanks. But anyway, let's move on to the damage line, which consists of Eileen, ChoiSehwan, and Develop. And let's talk about Eileen first, who is a flex DPS player who has been on this team since it was initially formed. Um, and he played a bunch of different heroes last year. And I think a lot of us remember him for his deadly Genji, especially because he's so great at taking duels and soloing backlines on him. He also showcased a good Hanzo, as well as played a bunch of hitscan after Mike Haley proved to be really incompetent. Uh, so he's a well-rounded DPS player, but he's not truly elite unless he's on Genji, in my opinion. So although he's definitely going to be an asset going into Overwatch 2, I don't think he's going to be like anything mind-blowing. Uh, do you agree with that, Nightwing, or do you feel about him more optimistically?
I think Eileen is a solid player. I think he has a good amount of flexibility that he's actually demonstrated. Instead of just showing it in contenders, he's shown it at the Overwatch League level. He's subbed in for Hitscan, even though that's not his main role anymore. Um, when Mike Lee, like you said, didn't really show up at all. He has a decent Sombra. He can play a good Tracer as well. But obviously, the most people remember out of him is that one uh, stage that is won in the Summer Showdown with the Genji meta. But it's been quite a while since that happened, and Eileen hasn't had too many bright spots after that, uh, just like the rest of the team. And hopefully they can change this season with a new game incoming. But I think it's definitely a tough ride for Eileen and everyone else on the team. Uh, I think he will still be one of the better parts of the team, though. I would probably rely on him to at least show that flexibility, pick up new heroes that are being introduced, maybe like Sojourn or whichever other hero gets added. I think due to Eileen's flexibility, he may be the first choice for uh, the Guangzhou Charge to pick up those new heroes.
Hmm. And it's interesting that he's still alongside ChoiSehwan, who has a very similar hero profile to Eileen's. Now, ChoiSehwan is also a flex DPS, and he and Eileen, in my opinion, were the best players on the charge last year. And that was mainly because ChoiSehwan also had a deep hero pool and a lot of mechanical skill. Like, I remember him being a really bright spot, especially on Tracer and Echo. He also played a really good Genji every now and then. And like I think he should be competitive going into Overwatch 2 because of how flexible he is. But again, like Eileen, I don't think he'll be anywhere close to a carry level player. He'll just be a consistent, stable presence, which I guess will lead to some fight wins for the team. But I don't think he's going to like explode and absolutely pop off, right? So pretty similar profiles for both these players. Do you agree with that, Nightwing?
I think I I have a bit of a different take on this. I think, like you said, yeah, they do have a similar hero pool. I think it's hard to really define what a carry level player is. I think uh, ChoiSehwan will not be a top tier player in the APAC region because that region is exceedingly stacked. But I think in terms of being a carry level player for the charge itself, I think he demonstrated that he definitely was that last year at least. You would see that ChoiSehwan would be the only one from the charge getting any kills in most of the matches. Like there would be multiple team fights where you'd see ChoiSehwan kill 2 people or 3 people, and then the rest of the charge just rolls over and dies, uh, because the rest of the enemy team would coordinate well among themselves and actually beat out the charge. I think there have been many instances where you saw that ChoiSehwan did do quite well for himself in that solo carry role, especially on the Tracer, obviously, which is sort of a solo carry focused hero at times as well. Um, I think in that sense, yes, he's a carry level player for this team. That said, yeah, he's not going to be top tier just because of how overwhelmingly strong the DPS on every other team is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and let's talk about Develop as well, who is the only core hit scan player on this team. Now, Develop is coming in from the Shanghai Dragons, and we just saw him play one map last year. And what are your thoughts on Develop Nightwing based off that one map that you've seen and any other places where you might have seen him play?
I think it's really hard to gauge where Develop might be at this point. I think he's just gotten the fattest paycheck of his life, winning for free with the Shanghai Dragons, uh, which is, good for him, but it doesn't tell us anything about the level of his play. I don't think he was exceptionally good or anything to really marvel at when he played that one singular map, uh, where Shanghai Dragons were just messing around and trying to experiment with their roster. I really don't know. I think he's just going to have to prove himself at the Overwatch League level when push comes to shove on the actual stage. I don't really have any analysis, but I do hope that he is able to show his stuff, because otherwise the Guangzhou charge is going to be in that awkward situation, mirroring exactly what they did last year, where they put in Eileen and try to make him, uh, play hit scan and then put ChoiSehwan on Tracer just to get something going. I think hopefully that does not end up happening and that Develop is able to do something. Uh, but I don't really know. I mean, how can you judge a player off of one map where the team isn't even really trying?
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think the only thing that's looking good for him is that there must be some reason Moon picked him up last year, right? Because like you look at an example like Fate. I don't think many teams would have even thought of signing Fate as a main tank, but Moon brings him in on priority and coaches him in such a good way that he becomes a core player for the team. And I think that a similar thought process must have gone into picking up Develop and even Who Are You, who's currently with the Dragons. So I think in Develop's case, he's probably been picked up because he couldn't find a better team, and the charge couldn't get any better players, and he was probably willing to take a lower salary because of that, as long as he gets a starting spot more often. So in general, I'm optimistic about the signing. I think it's a good entry point for him to showcase his skills in the league and then start improving from there. So I think he'll be good, but not, you know, not taking a lot of the hopium like right from the get go. So should we move on to the supports then, Nightwing?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to mention though that I think it's just really, really hard if you're in developed situation here, because the APAC region just has every single team stacked with an incredible DPS line, or at least a DPS line that probably beats out the one on the charge. I think there is a very real world where you would objectively just say that develop ends up being the absolute worst DPS in the Asia region just because of how stacked every other team is. And that's something that I don't want to see because he is still a young talent. But I think that's a very real possibility that we might just lament on at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair enough. All right, let's talk about the two supports the Chargers got, and let's begin with Unique, who was a uh, Korean main support coming in from T1. And would you like to share your thoughts on Unique first, Nightwing?
Yeah, so Unique comes in. He's done quite well for himself in Contenders Korea recently. And I mean, that's basically the most competitive tier 2 scene we have, really. NA is obviously also competitive, but I would go as far as to say Korea has pretty much always been the most competitive region for contenders. And I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. So, yeah, I think obviously there are some players that you would put above him, such as, Cho0ng or some other main supports such as that have been picked up just because they placed higher and they played a little bit better in contenders. But he's still a solid pickup. I mean, T1 came third in contenders recently, and obviously Unique was part of that. And before that, they came fourth. I think Unique is going to be solid. I don't think he's going to be the best rookie prospect for main support, but he still should be solid. He should be up to date with the current skill level of the main supports of the league. I think it really just depends on how well they're able to sort of scrim, how well they're able to analyze his gameplay in the context of Overwatch 2 to develop him into a player that can be an excellent support player in Overwatch 2 as well. Because obviously it's a new meta game. And I think more than Unique himself, who obviously has shown that he has the chops to stay with some of the better players in Contenders Korea. I think it's up to the assistant coaches to really develop him into a player that keeps up with the other main supports.
Yep, and I feel like it's worth mentioning that Unique is someone with a lot of tier 2 experience because he's had a lot of success with Element Mystic. If any of you remembers back from his Element Mystic days with Sparkle, Doha and Hanbin, he is one of the most aware main supports I've seen, and his experience is, I think, more valuable than anything, even his gameplay for this team, because he's been a consistent starter across so many different metas that he understands like all the nuances between different play styles, like positioning on different maps. And I don't think any of the other players on this team has spent so much time grinding in tier 2 before they've actually got a shot at tier 1. So although I don't think Unique is like like in the topmost tiers of main support play, I think he's bringing that veteran experience, and that's going to be a lot of that's going to be very useful for the team in general. And yeah, I think let's round things off by talking about Molly, who is a Chinese flex support, just China represent, along with Eileen, is joining from the Shanghai Dragons, and a lot of analysts are very high on him. But in my opinion, he's good, but not great, and hasn't really proven to be able to match a lot of top tier flex supports in the league. And I think it's good that it's going to change because he's going to have a starting spot on this team, and we'll actually be able to gauge his skill level. So we'll see if the other analysts are right or if I'm a bit more accurate. But Nightwing, I think I'll let you like share your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only real gameplay you've seen from Molly in a while has been one map in 2021 and then uh, a few maps in the Countdown Cup, I believe, in 2020. And that's a long period of time with not much gameplay to really accord for how well you would place Molly's gameplay. And so I think, like you said, Prolis, it's hard to really gauge uh, where he would be at, and just that lack of stage play time makes me doubt that he'd be very good. alongside him being signed to the Charge, which is not a great roster. Let me just say outright, I don't think it's a very good roster. And Molly being picked up here is obviously a combination of him probably not doing that well in tryouts, alongside him uh, just not, you know, being played almost at all in the past 2 years. So I think it's going to be an uphill battle for him, definitely, to show his stuff. Obviously, we can, use that same, the argument that Moon picked him up last year, so he must be good, right? But I don't think that's particularly applicable when he's a player that hasn't shown much gameplay in 2 years. So I think he's just going to have to kind of reprove himself uh, as a competent player in Overwatch 2. It's a good opportunity for him because it's a new game, new everything. So there is some, leeway there, but I wouldn't expect too much out of him.
Yeah, I honestly think that Shanghai only picked up Molly because they wanted to have a Chinese player since they are a Chinese team. Uh, I don't think it had anything to do with his actual skill level. And like, there's a lot more game tape on Molly than there is on develop, so I think that makes it a bit more easier to gauge his skill level. But I would still like to see him on a starting spot in Tier 1 Overwatch to actually see how good he is. Maybe we are wrong, so let's see how things go. And let's talk about the coaching staff for this team, Nightwing. Starting off with their head coach Sungwoo, who is Korean and has spent 2 years already with the Guangzhou Charge. But this is his first time as a head coach. So I'm not sure what the general opinion of him is out there, but he's certainly unproven as a head coach. So I'm not really expecting him to mold this team into like a playoffs contender, for example. So I don't know. I'm just not a huge fan of like making like an unproven head coach just head coach all of a sudden. I feel like it's better to have at least someone who's been a head coach at the contenders level than be a head coach in tier 1. But with like assistant coaches just being brought up to the head coach position, historically it's not been very successful. So we'll see how things go. But I'm a bit like pessimistic about this. What about you, Nightwing?
Yeah, I mean, ever since the inception of the Overwatch League, basically, uh, Sungwoo has not worked with one decent team. He's just worked with the Guangzhou Charge. He was signed to the LA Valiant in the off season before everyone got axed, and the team moved to China. So it's really just a very unexceptional career for him. I don't know what to make of it other than, like you said, he's unproven. He needs to show that he has the chops to get it done because there's no evidence in his career to show that. The Guangzhou Charge definitely have not done anything else exceptional. I don't think they've executed any comps exceptionally well. It's mostly just been a few players here and there that have sort of been carrying them, if I'm being honest. At certain times, it was Krong with his Sigma or Diva play or Zarya play. And sometimes throughout the past season, it was ChoiSehwan getting a few kills here and there with Tracer. That does not constitute good coaching by any means. So it's just really hard for me to have a lot of faith in Sungwoo so far. Maybe that will change now that he's got the reins of the team. But it's really, really hard for me to make that like conclusion based off of what I've seen from his career as well as uh, just how the Guangzhou Charge has worked so far. So I hope that it'll be different because this team is going to have an extremely difficult time being competitive against basically any other Asia region team unless something really changes.
Yup. And like to help him out, they signed two assistant coaches. One of them is Extra, who is a Chinese coach being promoted from T1W, which is the Chargers contenders team. And he has had multiple successful seasons with them, so he certainly seems competent. And since he's Chinese, I'm guessing he's going to be involved a bit more with Molly and Eileen, who are the Chinese players. But, like, I mean, usually it's unless they've got a really good translator or they are bilingual in Chinese and Korean, like there's not like great proven history of synergy between Chinese and Korean coaches, right? So I'm not going to hedge my bets on this, uh, but I'm excited to see the second assistant coach though, which is Youngjin, who used to be a player for the Shanghai Dragons. He has never been a coach before, and there has been a bit of a gap in his career. So I'm really not sure how good he's going to be. But I am excited to see the funny hero Doomfist slash Brick God. Not Brick God, Doomfist God. Yeah, but yeah, just coming into the Guangzhou charge. So, what are your thoughts on these assistant coaches, Nightwing?
So a bulk of extras past past 2 years career has been uh, in the role of manager rather than assistant coach. So that makes me doubt whether or not he'd actually be fit for strategic coaching, which is generally the job of an assistant coach, or any sort of analysis. If he's worked as the manager for the past 2 years for these previous teams, I think unless those roles were just not very well defined, and it's been lost in translation. It's just a bit hard for me to think of a person who's been a manager for a while now suddenly turn into an assistant coach and coach very good strategy into the team, right? So that's a bit of a question mark for me. Hopefully, the manager role wasn't very well defined in his previous roles, and he was actually doing that strategic sort of coaching. But I don't really know about that. Youngjin actually is an interesting pickup for them on the assistant coach role because I quite liked his gameplay on the 2019 Shanghai Dragons roster. I thought his Doomfist was quite interesting. And sometimes when he would flex over to some of the other heroes here and there as well, I thought he was quite good. He's been in Overwatch for quite a lot of time, actually. He's been a player that's been playing since 2016, basically. He has a lot of experience under his belt. He used to be a main tank at one point as well. I think he does know uh, the game to quite a high degree. He's been at he's been assigned to different roles and he's worked on different teams. So I think he could make something work. That said, he does not have a lot of coaching experience. He's had a break in his career for the past 2 years. So it's difficult for me to really gauge where he might be at. He's definitely not anything exceptional, though, unless the Guangzhou Charge have just found a diamond in the rough here for coaching.
Mm-hmm. And I think just to close things out, I think this roster looks pretty average, I guess. Is the average is the best I can give them at this point, just because of how much other teams have been upgrading their rosters. Um, I think they do have some pretty good pieces on DPS, but I mean, look, this is just on an absolute level. If you just compare them to everyone else, they're going to look like crap. So all in all, I don't expect great things from the charge, but they do have some good pieces, so they might pull off some surprise wins here and there. What are your final thoughts on this team, Nightwing?
Okay, if I'm being honest, I think this team is going to be in for a very rough time in the Asia region. I think there is a very real possibility that they will rack up losses to basically every team in the Asia region. I think unless Krong and ChoiSehwan both just absolutely turn up uh, and the support line does exactly what their job requires, and they probably go above and beyond that. Honestly, this team is probably going to even lose to the Valiant, who's been laughed at for the past year. Um, I I still maintain that I don't think Rio is going to be better than whatever unknown tank the Valiant are going to pick up, unless the Valiant just go really silly. So I do think that the Guangzhou Charge needs to be really smart about any future roster pickups, which need to be huge if they want to make uh, any sort of deep playoff run or even make it to any tournament. To be honest, because for obvious reasons, the Shanghai Dragons will be locked in, and the Hangzhou Spark, Philly Fusion, Seoul Dynasty especially, will be vying for those second, third, fourth place spots. I think the Guangzhou Charge need some very strong pickups still, uh, to be able to be competitive in almost any sense. Otherwise, they're going to be at the bottom of the entire league's leaderboard, really, um, because I don't think they have what it takes to get done. The coaching staff does not inspire a lot of confidence in me. Uh, Partially because it feels like every other team has real coaches, and here we're picking up players that haven't played or been a coach for the past 2 years. You've picked up a person who's been a manager for the past 2 years as an assistant coach. There's no real strategic coach that has been consistently working with Overwatch League level teams. And the head coach is a question mark as well. So there's not a lot to hold out hope for unless you think ChoiSehwan and CR0ng are just going to get 6Ks over and over again. I think the Guangzhou Charge are probably going to be at the second last or last place in the Asia region.
Okay, and on that note, we will round off this episode. Thanks very much for listening, guys. If you are going to be following the Overwatch League closely, feel free to join our Discord. We will be having watch parties and a lot of discussions in our esports channel, so we'd love to have you join us. And we will see you in the next episode, which will be about the Paris Eternal. Bye bye.